would take a number beyond reckoning, thousands to storm the keep.
Tens of thousands.
But my lord, there is no such force.
Its victory is at hand! To war!
It's time to play the music! It's time to light the light!
It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to get things started.
Hey, man, is that Double D? Yeah, man. Well, turn it up, man.
Let's just go in and, like, kill all the orcs, right? They're the bad guys. Who gives a shit? We just hack and slash and we loot their dead bodies, right? Hack and slash, kill them all, you know, conquer the infidels.
Boy, that campaign sounds like a barrel of fun, doesn't it?
Somebody who's opening a refrigerator and leaning in, right, is the language of a woman. Somebody who's opening the refrigerator and being cut off halfway through that lean is the voice of like a mermaid or a siren.
They're utter shits. They're utter shits.
This is not the face of the hobby anymore. And I think there's been mistakes made in years past where people assumed that D&D players were all, you know, white dudes in a basement. Which has been a faulty assumption for a lot of years and gets more and more false every day. And so it's, in my viewpoint, honestly, guys like me can't leave soon enough.
I just had to be born with empathy and a weakness for socialism and femboys. For socialism and femboys.
For socialism and femboys.
You gotta put a little hot sauce on the taco, you know what I mean?
We want this dwarf to be the dwarfiest dwarf.
Right.
We want the elf to be the elfiest elf.
And just the dashiest dash of Tabasco.
Their voices need to carry across water.
I'm a creative. It's a huge drain, right? Because fans can be off.
When we got the descriptions, they were very adamant. They were like, try not to make it like a white blonde guy. Like, please, like, we love him, but there's like 500 million of them.
You say white lives matter, they don't. White lives don't matter because white lives aren't a thing.
Lube for their rectal adventures.
Lutherville, Marina Del X, Otisburg. Otisburg? Who's this monster? She's got her own place. Otisburg? It's a little bitty place. Otisburg? Okay, I just wipe it off. That's all. It's a little town.
Okay. We'll do it live.
Okay.
No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
5, 4, 3.
Great, Sam.
I've got a really big gorge here that I've got to traverse. Your mom has a big gorge.
Did you cry? So much. I went into the house and my wife was like, "What's wrong?" And I just crawled onto her and sobbed.
Oh my God.
Well, ain't the old opening better?
Get away from me, you creepy, crazy fucking Canadian.
On with the show.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Friendly neighborhood Double D. Let's get that camera a little better. There we go. To my liking. Ta-da! Good to see all of you guys here. Thanks for showing up already. I know a lot of you just got back from Gen Con, maybe a little con fatigue. Dare I say a little con crud? But I think we have the answer to that. And that is this man right here, Dr. Greg Gillespie. How you doing?
Good to see you, Double D. It's been since Central New York.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure
and
was.
yeah, and we had a great time there. And if anybody has a chance to go, be sure to go next year. Lots of fun, growing con, great atmosphere, and we it was nice to see Mrs. Double D there as well.
Yep. exactly. Along with your, we'll just say your significant other guest. Yeah, great time, great gaming. I'll tell you, we'll read Badger's here for $5. Thank you, Badger. Pulled over on my drive to ask, are there any plans for an offset run for any Dragonslayer content in the near or far future?
Not at this point, because I'm hamstrung by international shipping rates. So what that'll do is it'll jack the price significantly. As we know, if you're going to ship books anywhere, that'll be expensive. And if you're going to go through international shipping, that'll get really expensive fast, and that can make it cost prohibitive. So at this time, no, but in the future, quite possibly.
Our goal is to get Greg down here to the U.S. So we want to make this project as successful as possible. So he can,
well, I appreciate that, because if I could wave my magic wand and make it happen, I absolutely would. But it's something that's on the back of my mind, and it's funny. Funnily enough, I have British citizenship through my dad. But Britain's in a worse situation than Canada is, but Canada is descending rapidly. So you have an amazing country. Your forefathers thought very carefully about it, and you have a 1A and a 2A that a lot of other Western democracies don't have, and those are core. They don't allow your republic to be overtaken easily. So cling to those. They're really important and central to Western democracy.
Yeah, we have a saying down here: "Cold, dead hands" when it comes to the Second Amendment, and it kind of seems like they sort of have given up on that. You don't see it nearly as much now. Whenever a shooting happens, they'll try to grab your guns, and I think they just realize like we won't stand for it. I've told Mrs. D, I'm a peaceful man. I will always look at the peaceful solution. I said, the day somebody comes knocking at my door to get, any of my guns, I will kiss you goodbye and turn outlaw, because that is just not going to happen. It's like you said, it happened in Britain, and look where they're at now.
And Canada as well.
Yep. It's a terrible situation in both countries. Craig, your fellow Canadian, who was also at CNYCon, got to meet him. Great guy. I backed the Northern Reaches, good sir. Also, JohnCon ticket sales are open. There you go. Thanks for your support. Cal, if you are here, you can put the link for the JohnCon tickets in the description. Thank you, Craig. It was great to meet you at CNYCon. And like you, I backed the Northern Reaches. I generally am not going to ask you guys to back something that I don't back with my own money. So I did. I got the base campaign book and a beautiful cloth map, which I'm sure we will talk about here in just a moment. So, all right, you are just for any. There's always new people tuning in, even if it's just a couple. Give a quick bio of yourself and your footprint in gaming.
Sure. Well, I'm an academic, so I trained as a historian in 19th century Canada. I wrote my dissertation on big game hunting in British North America in the 1840s to 1860s. And I worked through that, and that took me through kind of like academic life. And then when that research program was over, I actually did a large federal grant and submitted it. And it was on gaming, because that's the direction I saw my research going. And I understood then, when I got my feedback, how political federal funding had become for academics. And I wasn't going to play that game, and my politics didn't follow theirs. So then I decided, okay, well, I was also playing in my home game, and what would become Barrowmaze, and a friend of mine that I work with said, why don't you just make your own role-playing game that suits your style? And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I should do. So then I took my ideas to Kickstarter, and I'm a very firm believer in merit and the buoyancy of good ideas. So it just let the people decide whether something is worth funding or not funding. And I've been very, very fortunate. People have invested in me. I've tried to invest in them in return. And here we are, 16, 18 years later. And I'm still pecking away, and people still appreciate the stuff I'm writing. And I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful. So, like, I take the approach, you're only as good as your last book. And if that one sucked, then you suck. So I take it to heart. I try not to let people down, and I'm going to put my best foot forward as best I can. I'm not perfect by any means, but people's trust means a lot to me, and I want to repay that trust and spread Gygax's vision for D&D. I don't care about Bill Slavic's version of D&D. I don't care about Mike Merle's version of D&D. I don't care about Dan Ayoub's version of D&D or anybody in between. I'm sure they did great for where they were at, for what they wanted to do, but I just don't care. It's not Gygax's vision, and that's where I'm at, and that's where I center myself.
Unapologetically old school. I love it. You are a true believer, and that passion. If you have Barrowmaze, or Dwaro Deep, or any of the other mega dungeons Greg's done, you can see his passion runs pretty deep. And in some ways, the whole culture war, on 10, 12 years. I think it really hurt someone like you because, before all this stuff started, like Barrowmaze was just universally loved by everybody. And it still is to some extent, but some people always say like, oh, well, that's Barrowmaze. It's great, but the author is problematic, and as we all know, OSR Reddit, they have a particular love for you.
Oh, yeah. But Double D, I don't care. Hate is publicity, and you're not the baptism of fire I went through as a young man in graduate school. The Canadian university model was still very much at the time in the 90s based on the elite British model. That has since changed, but at the time I went through, it was a crucible of fire. And you had no ego left by the time you went through. There's nothing that anybody can say to me in gaming circles that will be half as critical as the kind of things I received as a young man that were foundational. And the other thing too is, and what I tell young creators that are just starting out, or people that want to publish an adventure or something small, is never take criticism from people that you wouldn't take advice from.
Yep. So very well put.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So there are ways of compartmentalizing stupidity, and I just don't care, because at the end of the day, I need to like when I was thinking about this earlier in relation to our talk tonight, and one of the things that struck me when your channel first started is that you have a voice. So in order to have a voice, you have to know who you are. And you have to know what your values are, and then you have to communicate those. And that's what struck me and led me to reach out to you when your channel first started, and we've been friends since.
Yep.
And so I think that it's important that when you look at any creator, that they have voice, and that means they have the clarity of vision because they're centered and they know who they are and they know what they want to communicate, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's in a RPG or anything or fiction, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, I always just kind of viewed myself, unlike you, who I view as exceptional. I was just kind of like an everyman, just like, is anybody else seeing what's going on here? And I'm. I was kind of looking around at other people on YouTube, and I'm like, I think I could at least give voice to, what I'm thinking. Maybe there's some other people. I sure thought there were. And sure enough, you were one of the people right away. I remember Pundit, who I think you also said went through the same baptism of fire, pun intended, as he has a game called that, through the Canadian university system. back in the day.
Yeah, and it's just a situation where you hit that point in career, and I hit that point quite a long time ago. I had a terrific father, a Scottish military policeman, so there was no buggering around, there was no nonsense. You did as expected, and by the time I went to university at 18, 19, I knew who I was. I'd passed through the eye of the needle enough times, and I'm thankful for any success I've ever had is a reflection of my parenting, to be perfectly forward and to give credit where credit's due. And so those things find expression in my creative efforts as well.
Let's get a quick super chat here from our friend Shellback Bow for 5. I'm looking on the Kickstarter, and it appears that if I add on the 4 mega dungeons, I will receive 4 copies of the Barrowmaze as well. Also, no t-shirts.
Well, each of the mega dungeons is separate, that you can add one by one as you wish.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not doing t-shirts. The logistics of doing the map have been challenging and time consuming. And so that's kind of where I've centered myself, is to find the medium for the map that's the best I can possibly do. And that's involved iterating, and it's involved my friends, and God bless them, because I've harassed them with, will you do this, will you do that, can you look at this, can you look at that, to get to survey and get enough opinions. So that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah, and keep in mind, guys, as Greg mentioned earlier, he is in Canada. They do not make anything easier up there, especially, with the value of the dollar, the discrepancy. I know it's a challenge for you. It always has been.
Yeah, it always has been. I've said before, it's I have to try to provide the same quality or better as my peers in the US using 30% less. And I decided a long time ago, I'm never going to allow that to be an excuse. I'm going to surpass expectations, wherever those may be. And my own, I think one of the other things that's really important is that you have very high expectations for yourself. And if you meet those expectations, you'll meet most of the other expectations along the way.
Yep, agreed. So let's take a look here. Got the Kickstarter page up. Already over 20 grand, just a couple days in. Not too bad. So we have the Dragonslayer RPG. What is the Northern Reaches?
So that's the campaign setting in which my home game has been based, and it's the foundational setting in which Barrowmaze and Archaea, Hyphel, and Warrior-Deep have all been set. So they've all been plotted, and that's kind of it's just bringing it all together. Now, initially, so what I did was I took the map and I divided it into 6 sections, with each a mega dungeon being the centerpiece of each. And my plan was, when I started with Barrowmaze, that I'd do the campaign setting last. And then after Warrior-Deep, people were very insistent that they wanted the campaign setting and they wanted the map and all that stuff. So I pivoted, and I did I've done the campaign setting, and the last 2 mega dungeons will come forward. Everything is consistent. So all the stuff that you see in Barrowmaze is going to be on the map and in the campaign setting, and Hyphel and Warrior-Deep, it's all consistent. Any material that will come forward will also be consistent. I take a long-term view. So that's what we do as academics. We're always doing things a year, 2 years, 3 years out, and we plan research programs in 7-year cycles. And I know that sounds insane, but that's exactly what we do. So I've taken the same approach with the campaign setting.
Diego Borges, will there be things not seen in the 4 mega dungeons in the Northern Reaches?
There are some fringe additions, enough to keep things interesting, but not like additions, not subtractions. So that's kind of like how I presented it, and it's really my approach with the campaign setting has been to model the map on kind of like Darlene's style with the Greyhawk maps, which was expertly done by Glenn Seal, but the campaign setting itself will read more like the gray box for Ed Greenwood's Forgotten Realms, insofar as you've got enough detail to situate your plan for your gaming group, but not a set of handcuffs that will keep you from ad-libbing or creating your own narrative within the confines of the material. And I think that's really the sweet spot, because we don't want to over detail something, because that doesn't allow creativity, but we don't want to under detail it either. And it's that happy medium that I've tried to find.
Yeah, you gotta, like you said, you gotta strike that medium. How long have you been, like, is the world we're seeing now, you know, that's presented, you know, in Barrowmaze and the others, and now kind of collated into the Northern Reaches, like, how long have you been working on this? Is this from day one part of your homebrew setting, or did this just kind of emerge, you know, at a certain point?
Yeah, no, it was if the folks go back and look at the initial Barrowmaze as it came forward, the first half of it, all the way back, I think that'd be 2011 or 2012. You can see it all there. It's all there to be had, and plotting things out and playing them out is part of the fun, and it allows the organic nature of play to come forward in the material. Now, I was at speaking to that point, I went to a writing workshop that Ed Greenwood held in Cobourg, Ontario 2 years ago. And it was kind of an interesting experience. There was only 20 of us in this humble little library where Ed Greenwood works. You'd think somebody as well-read and magnificent as Ed Greenwood would work in this like a major library, and it's actually quite humble. And so he held this writing workshop, and I think I was the only person coming there from role-playing games. I think everybody else was coming at it from a fiction point of view. So I'm peppering him with campaign setting questions, and that was very, very helpful. One of the things that that was helpful was that, you know, I'm not particularly interested in high politics and intrigue at court and those kind of things. But Ed Greenwood suggested that I do that. So I've endeavored to provide all the backdrop in which adventures can take place and campaigns can take place. And that's quite, I'll be very honest, that's kind of a struggle for me. But I think one of the things that you should always do as a writer or a creative is attack your weaknesses. You know, find the places where you can pull your socks up a wee bit and thereby fill out all the material. So I've endeavored to do that. I love really good constructive criticism, and you know, nobody's more well-versed or well-read as somebody like Ed Greenwood.
Yeah, it's definitely a different style of game, you know, because we have sort of played a little of it, maybe even not a little, you know, a lot of it via, you know, the TSR Birthright setting, you know, which is the setting that we just kind of adopted, and I've been running for, you know, over 30 years now. But yeah, it's definitely, I don't want to say it's a challenge for a DM, but it's a little different than, okay, you guys go back to town, you know, here's what's out there, you know, what's next, you know, where are you going to explore next? There's definitely some of that, but you know, you're dealing with a lot of NPCs, you know, when you're dealing with high intrigue and, you know, politics and stuff like that. Not for the faint of heart, I would say.
No, it's not, and everything has to be integrated, right? You can't just. It's like you can't throw a line out there like you're fishing and never reel it back in. You always have to reel it back in and ground it and center it, and so it's coherent and congruous within the broader material.
Yeah, I think Rick Baker, one of the last real good game designers that TSR, produced, that went over, to Wizards of the Coast. He just did a magnificent job in that setting. Adino here wants to know, he knows Herney the Hunter is from folklore, but does the old Robin of Sherwood series have any influence on your creativity?
Yeah, you're damn right it does. So, so when I was going through, Ken and James is the artist who did the cover, and God bless him. I mean, we've developed a really great friendship and relationship over time. And so, I was working through ideas. I was thinking, of certain things, and then ultimately we evolved to the point, and I'm like, yeah, it has to be Hearn the Hunter. And of course, if anybody's unfamiliar, Robin of Sherwood was an 80s TV series, and yeah, a bit campy as you might expect for stuff in the 80s, and yet the essence, the core of it is based in the Anglo-Saxon Dark Age. And so I think, like, when you think about Dungeons and Dragons, everything is post-apocalyptic insofar as you have a certain time period in which your adventurers are doing their thing. But there were past time periods and cultures that resulted in the dungeons, temples, and things that you're exploring. So for me, the center piece is the Anglo-Saxon Dark Age, which is like the coolest time period. But then the pre-society is the British Neolithic. And that doesn't mean I don't pull in other influences, because those are all there in an Indo-European sort of way. But the Anglo-Saxon Dark Age and the British Neolithic. And I'm not somebody that just talks about these things. If anybody's new, like I go to Ireland, I go to Scotland. I'm a big person, and I will push myself through those tiny little spaces to go into those Barrowmaze and to feel what it would be like to experience those things, and to look at the engravings on the inside, and to bring the feel to the writing. So those are really important things to me. And great callback to Hearn the Hunter from Robin of Sherwood for sure, and masterfully illustrated by Ken and James.
Yeah, and as you kind of just said there, it's hard to fake that authenticity. Like I remember you would send me pictures, when you I think you went on your last trip to Scotland, you were just so like jazzed up. It does kind of flow through to the final product. You can't really fake it.
It was when I was at TexomaCon, which was the first time that ran in Denison, Texas, at the end of June, and so it was a really interesting experience. I got to meet Troy Denning, and he played in my game, and we had some discussions about creative writing that were really helpful and interesting, because I'm coming from an academic background in history, which is very technical and active voice style, but most creative writing doesn't actually include active voice writing. There's a lot of liberties taken, and I expressed to Troy that every time I try to write creatively, I can hear my professors in my ear going, oh my goodness, like that won't even rise to the level of sociology. Why would you ever write like that? And I've got these old professors speaking in my ears, and I said to him, like, how do I go from hearing them to not hearing them and just letting it flow? And he gave me some great advice, and which I'll take to heart and bring forward. And of course, he's all world and everything in terms of writing.
Edgelord here promises not to crash this interview like the one at CNYCon. It's okay. It was a pleasure meeting you, Edgelord, and look forward to seeing you and everybody else there next year. Thank you very much. Craig for 5. I met Ed Greenwood once at the Great Canadian Baycon. Jeez, was that the name of a strip club? That's usually where you can find Ed. He's a cool guy. He signed my copy of Elminster in Hell. Yeah, everything I've heard about Ed is he's a very nice guy to meet person and always has time for the fans.
Yeah, he's very personable, and I've never met anybody that's as well read as he is. So, and I've been exposed to a lot of really great minds, international, American, Canadian, and he just floors me with his knowledge.
Let's see here. I'm just gonna go. Come on to see. Title and setting sounds almost like a nod to the Arcane Library's Western reaches. Obviously, there's no relation. Certainly not in Greg's mind. Can't wait to receive the book. Cool.
Yeah, so it's been called. I've had had an opportunity to speak to some of my friends. And they're like, well, there's been a couple other titles that have come forward that have related language, but the thing is, I've called it this for so long, for decades, that to call it anything else would lead to some author confusion. So I think one of the important things is you have to do what you do, and you're only ever in competition with yourself. So you don't worry, let other people do what they do, and I hope everyone is successful, because a rising tide lifts all the boats. But I'm not going to worry about what other people are doing. I have to worry about what I'm doing and keep, as Bill Parcells would say, keep my own house from burning down. So that's kind of like where I'm centered in that, in what I'm doing. And I think if I do that and I employ the rigor that's important to any successful project, that at the end of the day, everyone will be happy, and it'll have the production value, and it'll have the art and the aesthetic and the layout, everything working in concert, so that when you read it, it'll just make sense, and it'll flow naturally into your campaign if you want to play in that campaign world, or you want to just poach a region for your one-nighter, or a couple sessions, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I see. My picture looks frozen on the screen. Am I frozen to you, perchance?
You are.
Oh boy. 1 second here. Sorry, guys. In the meantime, go ahead and check out, in the link in the description, the Northern Reaches. I will try to solve this camera problem in just a momentito. Greg, if you want to expound, I know you're pretty good at talking off the cuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, one of the things that's been really interesting for me, because I've never written a campaign setting before. I never really wanted to write a rule book. I never really wanted to write a campaign setting. I only ever really wanted to create adventures. And because I think that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of the creativity and the idea for something. So thinking about a campaign setting, you really have to write it backwards to front. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of, I've got all, as I explained on the Kickstarter page, there's the different, the book's divided by chapters into the different regions. But the back matter is really what integrates all of the different regions and different sections. So when I was thinking about it, I was like, I started to write some of the front matter, and it just didn't really flow naturally. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, what appendices am I going to have to make this coherent? And then I concluded I actually have to do some of the back matter first. Then I have to go back to the chapter, well, what will be chapter 2, then write the various regions, then go back and write the front matter. So that's kind of, it seems counterintuitive at first until you get into it, but then you're like, okay, when you write all those chapters with the integrated back matter and the integrated front matter, it'll seamlessly come together. So, and I didn't really anticipate that. So that's kind of one of the things, writing and trying to create things sometimes doesn't go exactly the way you plan, and you need to revise and you need to think about how you deliver material. And that's been one of the surprises as I've gone through the campaign setting.
Well said. I think I'm back.
Yeah, you're good.
Titties and beer for $1. Are they stitch bound?
No, they'll come from drive-through, so that's where we're at. Now, at the end of the day, if I did a print run like that, plus the international shipping, I don't think it would be cost prohibitive, or it would be cost prohibitive, pardon me. So that's one of the reasons why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking.
Yeah, frozen pictures. I think the reason I was frozen is unbeknownst to me, I was streaming in like 4K, which I'm not hardwired up here. I will try to rectify that pretty soon though. Get a cable up here. Agile Monk, $20. My God. Let me give you something for that, sir. Let me give you yes. What we got here? Let's
like, you've got ogres.
You've got ogres. Greg, absolutely keep doing what you do. Your work has always been top shelf. Northern Reaches will be awesome. I agree. In my recent Kickstarter world setting, I have a chapter on Western marches from 52 years in the hobby. I salute you. Wow, 52 years, amigo. Salute to Agile Monk, and thank you so much for the generous donation.
Yeah, thank you so much for the comment. And we just I think at the end of the day, we have a certain vision for the game, one that has certainly, for me personally, the game has given more than I'll ever be able to give back, and I'm just appreciative. I see myself as a person that's trying to extend Gygax's vision for the game, the first generation of designers, the first generation of artists. And I think they really had a honed game. And it doesn't need to be, it's classic. It doesn't need to be made and remade. It doesn't need to fit the politics of the day. That game is the equivalent of classic, like Monopoly or Clue might be. And I think sometimes where people go awry is that they make their work presentist. They try to include silly contemporary things that ultimately limit the shelf life of their games. And what I've tried to do is to make things that are classics, things that fall seamlessly into the TSR world of Dungeons & Dragons, and that's my calling. I have no interest in doing really anything else. And staying true to your vision and who you are is part of finding your voice, and I'm very grateful that people think the same way.
Mark here asks how you react to negative comments on your work in progress. I think you may have already addressed that by your rigorous education, your doctoral education, that kind of immunized you from that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, and the other thing too, I just add to that, Double D, is that the longer you do something, regardless of what it is, the more detractors you will find, but the more fans you'll have as well. So I don't worry about people who have an interest in just saying negative things, and I have at least 500,000 plus words in role-playing games, and it's interesting, people might deride me for my views, but they can't quote anything that would fall into their worldview. And I always think that's kind of humorous to me. So I try to write classic games. I try to write games that are family friendly, because I think if you write games that are family friendly, you're going to cover the family. If the guys want to get together and they want to play that game, they can play it. If a group of women want to get together and play the game, they can play it. And I think that you cover everybody. And I think taste is a function of that. And some people have a different view, but that's where I am.
Well, maybe we'll put a pin on that, because I want to get your thoughts on the new Dark Sun, etc. that Wizards of the Coast teased at Gen Con. But War Historian here says that he met you at North Texas with his sons. He bought your entire catalog. Very nice. Been thinking about our history conversation. do you have any plans at any point, Greg, in the future to write a better history of the hobby? We've seen with these charlatans, you know, like Ben Riggs and John Peterson and others. Shannon Appelkline, I think, is the other guy's name. Just all these left fraudsters injecting their own personal opinions into it. Would you ever consider writing that style of book in the future?
Well, I'm more interested in creating role-playing game content than I am writing a history of the hobby per se. I think one of the things that's really important whenever you read one of the examples that you just described is, you know, when we write academic history, you can't just use the microscope, nor can you just use the telescope. The telescope is just sociology, and that's not even worth the words used to write it, to be perfectly honest. And the microscope would be very highly detailed cultural history. And one of the things, so for example, if you take John Peterson's work, and this is not anything taking away from the extent of the work that he's done, but he uses a microscope that's really down at the cellular level. And the mistake that he makes is that he never broadens backwards to say, okay, these decisions were being made in the moment at the microscopic level, but what's happening at the societal level or the cultural level that led to those decisions? And that's where his work goes wrong. And that's why I can't take chapters of his book and have my undergraduates read it, because it's just too far down in the weeds, and it doesn't take into the societal ebb and flow of the late 60s, 70s, early 80s. It's just too far down in the weeds. So would I do that? Maybe, but I have other things I want to accomplish first that I think are more important. So I would just say to your viewers, you know, anytime that you read, if there's a new history that comes out like that, the first thing you want to do is take the author's name and Google them. And because you can't separate the history from the historian. That's called historiography, where you take the politics or the individual perspectives of the historian and you connect it to how they write history. So that's the first thing I always do. And I would just encourage your viewers to do the same thing. So then, let's say you really want to read that book, that's great, but now that you know what the bias is, now you can go ahead and read it and take it with a grain of salt, one way or the other.
Yeah, and as an aside, I don't have much respect. I mean, I know they're published authors, you know, so kudos to them for finishing a book, but I don't really have much of a appreciation or a lot of respect for any of those three, because they're all pretty much in lockstep as far as their views of Gygax, and you know, what a terrible guy he was. It's just disgusting.
Like, here's the thing. At the end of the day, you never speak ill of the dead. They can't respond. And you need to understand that you should just write the history as expressed, and at some point you have to just keep your mouth shut. It's easy to speak ill of the dead. It's just low-hanging fruit, and I don't, like, as a historian, I don't really respect that. I think that you have an obligation to, just like if somebody sends me a book to review, even if I don't like it, I'm obligated as the reviewer to find the silver lining. Because someone decided that book or whatever it is worth writing. And if I can't see that, then that's my problem. I see it. You might say it's the author's problem because they didn't make it explicit, but I see it as my problem as the reviewer. And I'm obligated to find the silver lining, even if I don't like the book. So, you know, it's important we provide balance, and let's not speak ill of the dead. I think that there's a better way forward than that.
Agreed. And something just popped in my head. War historian, the gentleman who asked the question. I think you could also ask that question maybe of Jeff Talanian. That's a guy who worked for a short time, side by side with Gary towards the end, so he might have some insights. Also, Griffith Morgan too. That's someone who would give an unbiased, accounting of Gary, kind of like he did with Dave Arneson in.
Those are terrific guys, and I think it's important that you need to connect what you're studying with what's going on at the time, and because if the real estate agent's favorite word is location, 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 the historian's favorite word is context, context, context. We don't come to this conversation tonight outside of a context. Nothing happens outside of a context. And let's find that silver lining. Let's high road. And human beings are imperfect. I'm no different than anybody else. And but let's find the silver lining for those that are dead.
Blackstone for 5. Hail to Double D and Dr. Greg Gillespie. Thank you, sir. Love Dragonslayer and your Mega Dungeons. Will the campaign book organize all the deities in a concise manner?
It sure will. I don't like deity bloat, but yes, they will be. I've added more as I've gone along, as the Mega Dungeon, as the material has required it. So from there, I can add, and sometimes, you put things in because you foresee them being important and relevant further down the line. And that's kind of what I've done. And yes, so yes is the short answer.
I'll tell you what, let's... All right.
Ooh, we have art.
Yeah, yes. Tell you what, 1 second here. We will... Let me...
I might have to put on my glasses for this.
Yeah, me too. You ain't the only one. All right. There we go. All right. Now you sent me a couple of... just a couple of images.
Close
maybe
up.
just as like a little tease here. What are we looking at here, Greg? What are we looking at?
So this is the section, part of the section for the Forbidden Caverns of Archaea. And just to show you, just to zoom in a little bit, show you the excellent detail done by Glenn Seal, the artist. And here, what we tried to do is there are certain aspects of Darlene's work from the Greyhawk maps, which are kind of the perfection of RPG maps as far as I'm concerned. And we always I liked the how the volcanoes were kind of depicted. So we tried to incorporate some of that, and I wanted the drift from west to east with the smoke. So just showing you some of the additional close-up detail that you'll see on the map for this section.
Cool. Let's see here. What are we looking at here? This beautiful landscape here. Is this any particular place that you had envisioned, or is this just kind of a feel piece, that kind of gives you the feel of the Northern Reaches?
So yes, and this is done by an Irish fellow by the name of Stephen Thompson. He's not always available, but I harass him. Harass meaning I politely ask him every couple months when he's available, and so he's done 7 full-page landscape illustrations. Of which this is one, another's on the campaign site. So yeah, just to give kind of like a feel for what it looks like at the ground level. So we've got like the telescopic view with the map, and then zooming in for some landscape close-ups.
I love it. I love it. Speaking of zooming in for a close-up.
Yeah, so there's a new monster section. So Ken and James has done 20 plus illustrations for the new monster section. So this is the giant prismatic moth that is one of the really cool illustrations that he did.
Yeah, I love it. So maybe now that he's sort of, well, I'm assuming he's done with your stuff. He keeps sending me piecemeal my stuff. He keeps saying, he's like, yeah, I got this huge project I'm working on, and I kind of figured out. I'm like, oh, that's great. So I'm like, but that's okay. My stuff can wait. Yeah, God, he is so good.
Oh yeah.
In my opinion, one of the best. One of the best
oh, yeah.
in today's game. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, and the reason is it leaps off the page, and the use of negative space, not particularly in this illustration, but in others. I mean, it's just fantastic. So he has an exact grasp of the old school vibe, and just a pleasure to work with, and a great guy.
Yeah, I will attest to that too. Having, like I said, brought him on to do some work for me. And now this is, I mean, that was a great picture, but this is like just the classic lines here.
Yeah. So this is just a variant of the Chimera with a basilisk dragon, and so this is just again, leaps off the page, full of character, and a tribute to him.
Yes, I mean, these really capture the old school feel. I agree, and there's, I don't hate color art. I think when color art's done right, it can be fantastic. But there's just something about this old school line art, just real, broad, and I'd call it brave line work. Just you're putting it all out there, and man, when he does it, he makes it sing.
Oh, he really does, and that's the thing. So I think one of the things that I always liked about Kennan's work, and we've talked about this. I mean, we've worked together for a long time now. Is that I think a lot of artists make the mistake they try to sketch their work, and the sketch work looks muddy at the end of the day on the page. It's the high contrast black and white art that I'm always after, and that Kennan does so well. So we're just hand in glove when it comes to the look that we want. We're aligned completely, and I think a lot of old school artists could do well to study him, and by study I mean very carefully detail each aspect of what he's doing and try to mimic that.
Another map piece here. Where is this at?
So this is in the center upper portion of the map, and this is the area for Warrior-Deep, which
Yes.
Which was super fun. I've had so much fun doing Warrior-Deep and playing it, and one of the highlights actually was I was invited to a friend's place in Austin before T-Fest, and we, which is Ken and James convention, and with his gaming buddies, and ran Warrior-Deep on like the LCD tables that are in the center of the table face up, and then we threw a fog of war on top of the subterranean hex map, and we just had a lot of fun. It was really terrific, a great experience, and so this is just showing a little bit of what that looks like.
Beautiful. Yeah, Warrior-Deep is such a cool campaign. Honestly, it's one of those books, even if you don't ever plan on running it or playing in it, just to have it and see all those incredible drawings of each area is just mind-blowing. The amount of detail that there is, visual detail.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you're thinking about a project, it's helpful to think like pie in the sky. And what I mean by that is, so you have this idea for this role-playing game or supplement or adventure or whatever, and then ask yourself, like, what is the most awesome, coolest, epic way of portraying that adventure on the page? Now, sometimes we have the ability to see that vision realized, and sometimes we don't. But Dwaro Deep is just very special to me because it finds that interstice between playable Gygaxian Dungeons and Dragons and Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And I just, like, that is, if Moria is the archetype for every dungeon that followed, certainly in D&D, it's just fascinating to me that was never actually realized. There were some bad third-party attempts and things like that, but at the end of the day, I think that that's really the apple of my eye, and having all the kind of strips at the bottom of the page depicting the material on the page was really fun to do. It's a tribute to Peter Pagano, the artist, and it was amazing. It was amazing to do. It was amazing to play, and I'm very fortunate to have had those experiences.
Hamubambo, there's a mouthful, wants to know, are there going to be any new classes or races in here? And is there going to be like domain play? I know you mentioned something about politics earlier. Is there going to be actual like rules or anything for domain play?
So yes, the Bard, my version of the Dragonslayer Bard will be there. Also another race as well. I really don't enjoy domain play. I just think that one of the things that I've learned from the players that I've played with is they want a dungeon crawl, whether they're level 1 or whether they're level 12. And so I think I understand that, in the past there's been an effort to, you kind of develop a stronghold or keep or whatever, and you can do more kind of domain play from that standpoint. It just never really excited me. I'd rather sprinkle in some larger battles and things like that as players are progressing through levels like 1 to 10. And that's more interesting to me than domain play. And I also think I'm a dungeon crawl purist. So from that standpoint, I like the engagement of trying to foil players that have all the spells, that have all the magic items, and that have all the abilities and things of that nature. That's where kind of I'm focused and interested. But I understand the interest in domain play, and you can certainly do that if you desire.
Yeah, and if you recall, those of you that have the Dragonslayer RPG, you can do free third-party content and put it up for sale. And Greg has just some minimal steps you can use. He has a compatibility logo and just some wording that you have to put in, and you can go to town. Just try to think it through. And like I said, I've done one small class. I don't even want to call it a bard, so I don't even know how much it would compete with your bard, but it's bard-esque, but more of a warrior, more of like a warrior captain, like a warlord almost.
Sure.
But I was, but I kind of thought like, all right, think this through. Don't just, kind of slap it together, put some thought into it and, make it, worthy of, the Dragonslayer logo. But yeah, you can do
well,
that.
the thing is, Double D, at the end of the day, there's room for everything. And so, if one person likes one version or one person likes another version, and, you can add and subtract as you see fit. And that's the great thing about playing TSR versions of D&D or their clones, is that the DNA is consistent, and you can add and subtract as you want, and you can graft onto or take off, and as it relates to how you like to run your game or how your players like to play, and you can add and subtract to make everybody happy at the table.
I know way back, when you were launching the game, I know your monk is more Western European, which is kind of more my jam, my aesthetic. But I know some people, we're probably missing the Far Eastern version of the monk, and there's nothing stopping you guys from just doing a version of that for Dragonslayer.
Sure. Yeah. I like, for me personally, if you look at the AD&D player's handbook, and then you ask yourself, where's the outlier? It's certainly the monk. So everything is situated kind of in the Anglo-Saxon Dark Age or some variant thereof, and the Shaolin monk just doesn't fit per se. Now that doesn't. If you love the monk, more power to you. I just think that there's a better way of integrating the monk into the other classes, and that's why I did what I did.
I'm glad you did, but I can also see the case for just kind of, I guess for lack of a better word, grandfathering it. I know it doesn't fit, but it's like, it's one of those things, it's sort of been in there for so long. It's, it kind of, you grow a fondness for it almost after a while, even if you don't quite use it that often.
Well, the uneven texture of AD&D is part of the charm.
Yes.
And I acknowledge that. I'm not, but there's unevenness in the demons and devils, which I thought could be evened out a little bit. It's more sensical. But having said that, I acknowledge the unevenness and the appeal of some of the unevenness.
Before we talk about what we're seeing here now, another great piece of art. Diojo just wants to know, did you put any more like detailed rules or material on hex crawling, outdoor survival?
Well, in terms of how do you hex crawl and things like that, that's yes. But at the end of the day, once you establish like, the rates of travel and things like that, everything is kind of, I don't think there's a need to remake the wheel on that point, but rather, contribute to it after the wheel has been made. And that's really where I'm at. I don't see a need to remake things that work, that are sensical, and people are accustomed to. For example, with the Drero Deep subterranean hex crawl map, that thing was a joy to create. It was very highly detailed. But at the end of the day, if you played the Drow series or you played, any of the older subterranean hex crawls, the logic of that will allow you to look at the Drero Deep hex map and say, I get it. That makes sense. I know how to do this. And that's how I feel about hex crawling, outdoor hex crawling.
So what are we looking at here?
So this is the giant
a big bird.
Yeah, this is a giant pterosaur. So the funny thing is, when I sent pictures to Kenan to say, this is kind of like where I'm at. He's like, oh yeah, I really want to illustrate that, and he was as excited as I was, and I think one of the fun things about D&D is that we can, you can have your standard like giant monsters, but then you can also have your dinosaurs, and you can have some of these other things that are part of the pulp nature of AD&D or Dungeons and Dragons, generally speaking. And I think it's fun, and I think it can be, it's so cool, and we've had it represented in film in recent years as well.
Yeah, and Meow here says, he's not feeling the dinosaurs into the European aesthetic, just like the Easter monk. But yeah, like Greg said, that's the cool thing about the old D&D. It's kind of a cat kitchen sink, you don't like it? Just get rid of it.
Well, the other part too is, let's just take a moment and think about why Wizards of the Coast version of D&D sucks so hard. And it sucks because it's self-referential. They've when you stop reading widely, when you stop taking in influences from this type of fiction or that type of fiction or new archaeology or whatever, your work compartmentalizes, it collapses, and it becomes self-referential, and it becomes lame. And let's not let that happen to the version of D&D that we love. And dinosaurs were in the monster manual from the get-go, so it's not like there isn't precedent. And I am a big believer in precedent. Anytime we're thinking about making a new spell or a new monster or whatever it may be, I always ask, what are the precedents? What's come before? And how does my version of that stay similar to or different from what's happened in the past? And part of that is the respect I have for the TSR designers, the artists, and the creators.
Well, I'll tell you, we'll put a pin in that for a moment. But yeah, Surly asks, good to see you here, Surly. Is Greg going to run a session or two with you all again soon? I thoroughly enjoyed watching you guys play his game. Yeah. Well, I think real life kind of caught up a little bit to Greg. He was having to handle a couple things. But yeah, I mean, I know I and pretty much everybody else in that group would probably play again with Greg anytime for you guys.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, that's for sure. And you never know. I've had a bunch of play experiences. I'm very thankful that I could bring everybody together. And the fun part for me is that it had people that I had known for decades, and it had people that I've met relatively recently, and then people I've met online, and then people I've met at conventions. And it was a really great group of people. And the rewarding part for me is there were a lot of friendships that developed from those game sessions that I didn't anticipate, but I'm so pleasantly surprised. Like, people have become genuine friends. They reach out to each other. They ask each other, about things they're creating and stuff like that. And it just came from the joy of playing games together online.
It's beautiful. Yep. Yeah, Sebel 3002. You always like the fish out of water aspect, having a Ronin or a monk traveling through the Western landscapes. Yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, it had an impression on a lot of players in the 80s, because it was a new class, and everyone's like, oh, this is so cool. You could be like Kung Fu, just wander the earth like Cain. I definitely get it. It was never, I had the same problems with it that I'm sure Greg did, and that you're trying to tell a European based a Shaolin monk, it just doesn't jive.
Yeah, I mean, but again, I understand it. I get it. You're not going to get any argument from me. Just my personal preference. And you can take the AD&D monk and slide him right into Dragonslayer game 1-to-1. It'd be perfectly fine.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah, I'd love to watch our live play. Yeah, I'm sure in the future we will. Greg, keep in mind, Greg's going to be very busy trying to complete the campaign setting here in Northern Reaches again.
I'm a grueling taskmaster of a DM. That's what people enjoy.
If you're ever with Greg at a convention, it's very procedural. Watch what you say. Words have meaning at his table. So, Atlas DM for $10. Thank you. Let me see if I got something for you right now. Oh boy, let's. Oh yeah, whatever.
Ew, what happened to the tolerant left?
What happened to the tolerant left? I've been motivated to put my own homebrew setting to page. I'm about 60 pages in. Congratulations. One day I'll share it with you, Double D. But don't hate on my AI art. I don't hate on AI art. I spent my art budget sending you super chats, LOL. Well, I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's funny because I'm doing an adventure right now, and I'm trying something new. I have the kernel of some artistic ability, not a lot, but there's some good public domain art. But there is also some fill-in pieces that I think I can do myself for this. Just kind of, it's a short adventure, just meant to be, like a one-night thing. It'll be priced that way too, But I'm like, I can do some of these little inserts, some of these headshots and that. So we'll see how it goes. It's, obviously I don't think Ken and James has anything to worry about just yet, but I don't know. If you look at it, you generally know what you're getting. And still, there is good public domain and art in the commons, Creative Commons out there too. So go ahead, Greg. What were you going to say?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to add to that. Like, my perspective is probably a little bit different than a lot of OSR folk, because it comes from, I see myself in space. So, for us, for our generation, if you use AI art, you're just going to be called a poser, and I get that part of it. But if you're under 25, you're going to be using AI art, and you're not even going to blink. So we need to understand this is very much generational at this exact moment in time. And AI is coming in hot for a lot of different jobs, and art, unfortunately, is going to be one of them. Do I foresee using AI art? No. Might I down the road when it's significantly better than where it is now? Maybe. But I have no intention of, there will be no AI art in the campaign setting. I don't foresee using AI art in the future. But, never say never. And things are just advancing so quickly, so fast, that I don't know what the future is going to bring. I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, I think the stigma is going to be slightly, like you said, because just of how ubiquitous it's going to be, the stigma will sort of lessen. Having said that, I think there will always be a premium. People, I think, will get used to seeing AI art, and they'll be like, that's nice, that's nice, that's nice. And then, they may see a piece of human art, and they'll be like, oh, I like that. That's not perfect, but that's something somebody made. I think there's always going to be a yearning for art that somebody put, like with your writing, put their heart and soul into. And I think that always will win through. And that's, the best AI art, of course, is going to beat, the worst human art. But if there's an earnest effort with a little bit of skill, that's always going to trump a good piece of AI art, in my book, at least.
Yeah, no, I agree with you for sure. There's for example, like looking at Kenan's art, it just leaps off the page, and a lot of AI art doesn't do that, of course, because it doesn't have the soul in it. But the other part of it too is that for example, if I'm going to create pre-gens for a convention, I'll use AI art. I've used AI art for it in the past, but that's non-publication. That's just like running game at a convention. You want a quick character portrait, and away you go. But that's, what's in publication and what's not are two different things for me personally.
Yeah, and I do the exact same thing. All of my pre-gens have beautiful AI, pictures, and that's not putting anybody out of business, because I never would have paid an artist, nor would I have ever drawn that myself to do that. So that's a use case for AI right there. My buddy in my Birthright campaign kept a journal of one of the campaign sections we did, from like 2008 to 2015. And he's using AI video to kind of animate it. And it's really cool to see. And I'm like, this is a good use case for AI. We were never going to hire a animator to animate our campaign. That never would have happened. So here's a good way to, get some insight into, the game I ran, almost 20 years ago now in Birthright. And it's good. But yeah, and look, I understand also people have budgets too, and artists are busy. And, the good artists are never cheap.
No.
So, you always have to factor that in. So that's why I never wag my finger and say shame. I would always say, look, if you have the budget, if you have the means, see if you can find a good artist, because they are out there. And yeah, you may pay a little more, but, it might be worth it in the end. So.
Well, it's like, do you remember the kind of moral panic when people first started using Photoshop, right?
Yes.
It's like, oh my, that's not human done, right? So we have to understand where we are in time, and that this is all part of it. And now, of course, artists they might do something by hand, then they'll bring it into Photoshop or whatever. They'll touch it up there, do their thing. That's all standard operating procedure now. So I think it's important to acknowledge where you are.
Chris here has offered before and again, he will draw something for anyone. There, you guys get a hold of Chris. You can put your contact information in there, Chris, if you would like. Toby can make that live if need be.
One of the people in the chat was asking, does Greg have any advice on how to create interesting choices for players? And I would say, understand the moral or ethic of your player, and then put them in a moral quandary. And this is really great with lawful good characters, especially paladins. So you can have, you want to put them in a two-way go. So it's like, well, the ogres are going to destroy the village, and the Black Knight is also going to your keep to, destroy the keep or take your maiden. And then they have to make a moral choice about does the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and that's how I think that's really fun to play at the table. It takes a little bit of forethought, and also you have to ensure that your players are playing true to their character that they've established or their alignment, and then don't be shy about throwing an alignment deviation as necessary.
Yeah, there was we had an instance. It was in that very campaign that one of my players is animating, Dalamir's Journal. It's called. That's the channel here on YouTube. But he hasn't gotten there yet. Not to spoil, but there's just this classic. I can promise you, I didn't plan it, but that section of the campaign had to do with war. That was the theme was a war between the Great Anurian Empire and the Red Kings of Aftane. And it just so happened, all the players were kind of swept up into the war. And, because it's Birthright, there are royal connections. And my one player, who's, my longest tenured player, Scott, his uncle was, kind of the, I don't want to say the archetype, evil uncle, but a little bit. I like to say there's a little bit more nuance with the characters I presented, but he was not going to lead things in a good direction, and he may have been coming to power. Well, he lay wounded 50 yards this way. Another player, Rogan's character, lay wounded 50 yards that way. And the person in the middle, and like I said, it was just amazing because there was no planning for this. The person in the middle is the one who I guess would sort of be considered the focal point, my friend Scott's character. I'm like, I said, they're both very wounded. One is down, but they may get up. I said, you can probably save Rogan's character, or the uncle is lying flat over there. He may live, who knows? He may die. Mm-hmm. He chose to go over and kill his uncle. Rogan's character died. So, it was one of those things too. Rogan didn't hold it against him because he understood that was a choice in the moment, and it was a interesting choice for the, for the whole, campaign. Set things in a different direction, because I certainly, wasn't anticipating. I wasn't planning on anything, but I certainly wasn't anticipating it.
One of the things that, players want to be wishy-washy so that they can get away with the most things possible. And your job is to make them play to their character and to their alignment and to their class or whatever their background might be. So having said that, they want to keep things broad so they can get away with more, and you want to narrow it down so you can put them in those moral quandaries. And just looking at the comment there, thank you very much, Mr. Plinkett. I do appreciate that very much. Yep. I think one of the things that's really important if you're just starting out, you're thinking about writing an adventure or doing something like that, is your art appraisal is a very important part of creating anything in role-playing games, because our audience is primarily men. Men are primarily visual learners. So what one person can see in a picture, that could be, for me, a picture is worth about 120 to 160,000 words. That's where I'm at. I see one image and my mind explodes down a circle of Alice in Wonderland creativity that I can see all the depth and the breadth in it. And I never stop art appraisal. So for example, if I'm in Ireland or Scotland or whatever, and I'm looking at something, I'm thinking camera angles relative to taking a picture that I can send to a Ken and James, or I can send to a Peter Pagano, or I can send to a Stephen Thompson, and say, okay, you see this angle, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm looking at, this is where I want in the fore, mid, and background, this is how I want it balanced. And most artists will really appreciate the fact that you've conceived it in your mind and that you've written a brief that can express that to them. And a good part of my dissertation was art appraisal. And no, I've not cornered the market. I'm certainly not an experienced artist. I can draw you a good stick figure, but I can write a really good description. Or I can see a picture and know the angle I want and communicate that. And I think so that never stops. And another part of it too is that if you do it for long enough, you'll evolve, right? You'll start to see things. Maybe an artist points it out to you. Maybe you see things in some other way that you're like, yeah, and you just tuck it away. So like my favorites folder on my phone, it's filled with images that could potentially be an art reference down the road. It never stops, and it's always evolving. And so I really appreciate the comment about the art, because I do think about it a great deal.
For sure. Antonio wants to ask if there will be any official VTT support. He makes high quality ones as a hobby.
So I don't play on virtual tabletops myself, but one of my good friends is making all the material for Roll20, so that'll be up relatively shortly. So you should be able to play and have all the Dragonslayer stuff in there if that's for your interest.
Thank you, Antonio. Much appreciated. Travis, 27 months. Thank you, brother. Good to see you.
Huzzah!
Travis is he's a Dragonslayer true blue believer. He has made great content for Dragonslayer, for sure.
He certainly has, and his jousting game is super fun. And he very kindly, I asked him if he'd make a knight for me in his game. So it's Sir Gregor Allen. So Allen is my paternal grandmother's maiden name, and Gregor for me. And so that should be super fun. So you can play as me in his game at tournaments and at conventions and stuff.
You know how the sausage is made. Shellback for $10. Oh my! It's like, oops. I'll find something for you here, sir. Ooh.
You know, Quasimodo predicted all this. Who did what?
Shellback for 10. I'm working on my own stuff. The Ignited Dice Engine rule set and my Holy Byzantine Shogunate setting. And I really want to commission some ukiyo-e style for the setting books and non-digital cover art. There you go. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm not sure if Greg will be able to help there, but obviously we are very interested, as Shellback is a true fan of the show. So yeah, well, Holy Byzantine Shogunate. That sounds interesting. Keep us updated. Let's see here. See if I got any others. Okay. I guess before I was going to ask you a question about Wizards of the Coast. Before we go, before we go there, I should say. By the way, can you stick around a little longer, Greg, or do you have a hard out?
Oh yeah, no, whatever you need. I'm happy to keep going.
We can let it run a little bit here. Conversations flowing pretty good, I think.
Mm-hmm. Always.
This, let me bring it up again. All right, so we didn't really touch on it, but explain that this map that you're going to get is going to be on cloth. Correct?
Yes. So I have the prototype here. If you want me to show it.
Yes, indeed.
So this is what it looks like in its entirety.
Wow.
And the great thing about this is that if you want to fold it, you want to take it to conventions or take it to your game night or whatever, you can do that. And it's terrific for that purpose. And so the great thing about that is it's not as thick as canvas, which would crease. and it's not as fragile as paper. And so it's right in that in-between space. And it's really quite glorious in the 32 by 32. So that's, and also there are logistics considerations as well. So I don't want people getting their map and having to pay a duty or a tariff or something like that. So I've really had that at the forefront of my mind and thinking relative to, I want to make sure that people aren't dinged extra when they receive it or anything along that line. So I'm very pleased with the quality of it, and I've iterated for a year. Really at North Texas, since before North Texas in 2025, thinking through posters, various paperweights, canvas, and then finally settled on the cloth. And the cloth is one of the more expensive ways to go, but so worth it at the end of the day. So
it looks it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just said it definitely looks it. I can't wait to get my hands on that. Looks beautiful, Greg.
Yeah, and again, it's the utility, because I want to be able to take it to conventions that I go to and things of that nature. And I was thinking of that. I was also thinking, ensure I don't want anybody paying duty or tariff on anything that they receive, and the longevity of the material. So I didn't want to do, when you think back to like the TSR box sets and things like that, you'd get your maps and they'd be folded, right? And then with enough use, they'd all have the crease lines, and we just, we just moved on because that's what you had, right? You never really got a TSR map in a poster tube or things of that nature. And so the cloth is a happy medium between poster and canvas.
Sure is. Here we got some of the levels. Now, you have to put on, when you're on Kickstarter, you have to put these in order of price. So, of course, Greg is letting you circle back in case you missed getting the Dragonslayer RPG, the Mega Dungeon Monster Manual, or any of the 4 Mega Dungeons he's done. You can do that here. So here, keep in mind, if you're in America, you're getting a steep discount here, and he goes to the trouble of putting the rough American price here. So I'm telling you, $58 for the game and the Monster Manual is a screaming deal.
Yeah, it's you're saving 30% effectively if you're in the United States.
Yep. Get different. The OSR Tetra Dungeon. So what is that?
So if you the 4 mega dungeons of the 6 parts, always been a 6-part series. Mm-hmm. So there are 4 currently available. So I jokingly called it the Tetra Dungeon. Mm-hmm. And if you prefer, there are the color covers, there are the monochrome covers. Really, whatever you prefer. And then with the Dragonslayer book, Jeff Easley, who did the cover of the Player's Handbook and the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, did the cover for Dragonslayer. Very thankful. And he let me buy the original, which is hanging in my game room. And then Ken and James did the amazing black and white cover for Dragonslayer, and that leaps off the cover as well.
Yep. So here, if you're just in it for the that beautiful map and the campaign setting, this is probably the pledge you're going to want to go to. Mm-hmm. So under $250 Canadian, but well under that if you're American. So again, you get taken care of if you're south of the border. And of course, you can add on any of the mega dungeons if you just back the campaign setting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to offer as much flexibility for folks that, if they want something or they don't want it within the confines. I have constraints as well as anybody would running a Kickstarter. So I'm trying to provide as much flexibility as I can within that frame of reference.
T&B likes the cloth map. Yeah, I don't know how you couldn't like that. It's just very
it's super sweet. So I'm very pleased with it, and I'm not going to go ahead on something unless I know that folks will be happy with it at the end of the day.
So pivoting just a little bit here, I fired up the stream a couple days back when Wizards had their big reveal announcement at Gen Con. They announced several things, and one of them was Dark Sun, which I don't think was a huge surprise. I think it had been teased for a little while. They were hinting at it using classes, and they released some artwork where, there's a gigantic woman ripping a head out of the, off of someone's body with the spine still attached. If I see that picture now, and I don't know if you have a chance to look at it, maybe we can pull it up in a little bit. But the head is a skull, but the spine still has viscera attached to it, like blood and all that. I'm just like, why is the head a skull already? Why isn't it a head? Of a person who was just alive moments before. But regardless, it seems like they're kind of leaning into the very violent aspect of Dark Sun. But as we know, and even if you didn't play it, Dark Sun, slavery, a blasted world, hard to survive, a lot of things that you would think Wizards of the Coast would find problematic. What do you think they're going to do with Dark Sun? Do you think they're going to whiz it down their leg again, or do you think maybe this is the first step on a potential, road to recovery?
Well, I think one of the things that we always need to do is take a look at the body of work. And the body of work provides zero confidence that they can do anything well. So, and especially with their political worldview. Let's just think back to 4th edition. Didn't they make some announcement about Dark Sun right at the beginning of 4th edition or something around there? And it never materialized. Their Wizards of the Coast is long on promises and short on delivery, and one of the things that I do try to tell people that are thinking about writing adventures or supplements or campaign settings is that you need all the tools laid out on the table. And what I mean by that is that if I'm writing a role-playing game or a piece of fiction or a campaign setting, I want the breadth of material from triumph to tragedy. I want all the space in between there. And I do not want to be hamstrung by language politics or contemporary politics or worldview. I don't want any of that. Now, I do think there are questions of taste within there, but as soon as you cede control of language, as soon as you cede control of creativity, if you cede control of ideas, you've ceded control of cognition. Now your mind's been colonized, and your stuff is going to be crap. And it's going to be crap because not all the tools are on the table. It's like if a surgeon is going to do heart surgery and they only have half the tools on the table, are you confident they're going to do a really good job? No, probably not. And it's no different if you're a creative. So I just don't understand it. I just do not understand the logic. To me, Wizards of the Coast is just a Gawker slowdown. It's like, yes, so we're slowing down, there's an accident on the highway, and we're checking to see if there's blood, and there may or may not be, and then we just keep going on our way. But it's not impacting the route I'm taking from point A to point B. It's just a slowdown. So I don't put any confidence into them at all.
Yeah, to me, it just kind of seems like a cheap cash grab. They're obviously, it's kind of funny because for a long time they pretended we didn't exist. And then when they saw the success of a lot of the third party old school stuff, they started to pay attention a little bit. So now apparently this is for us. But as you said, I wonder let's cede the point, even if it's not true. Let's, for the sake of argument, cede the point that Dan Ayub is an honest engine and wants to maybe right the ship a little bit back towards, a better direction. My view is he can't do that solely because of where he is and who he works with and who he works for. So if he were, to say like, hey, you know, we're going to lean into this slavery thing. What do you think the rank and file, the people that actually have to put pen to paper, are going to say? They're going to be like, well, I can't do that. That goes against my personal ethos, you know, my code. And he says, yeah, but, you know, this is a game, you know, and then all of a sudden he's on our end, getting what we've got in the last, 10, 15 years. So my view is it's going to be almost impossible to change. And I made a video on this while the game is sitting in a place like Seattle, Washington. The politics there won't allow any change at all, even if there's a desire to.
Yes, I agree with you completely. I also think, trying to incorporate Hickman or Manganello or Luke, this is window dressing. This is a veneer. It's trying to, once you pierce the veneer, there's nothing substantive beyond it. So I put zero stock into all this. I think they're just long on promises and short on delivery. I agree with you completely based on where they're located geographically, based on the commitments that they have made in past material. There's nothing to suggest any confidence at all. I see Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro like I do Disney. They are extensions of, there are cultural industries that are an extension of the World Economic Forum. Their purpose is to sow dissent and to sow division and to disrupt shared Western narratives. That is their purpose. You need to see them for what they are and then respond accordingly.
Shawnee giving out 5 memberships. I got you, brother.
55, 65, 75, 85. After that, you probably dead.
Probably dead after that. Thank you. Thank you, Shawnee. Much appreciated, brother. Good to see you here, as always. It's like I said, I don't want to turn into a reflexive hater or curmudgeon. That's why I'm almost like, well, let's see what it is, before we tear it apart. But, I also did a post on X today where I just kind of said, like, look, they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. They haven't
Correct.
earned it after their behavior, especially the very. It would be one thing just to produce shit. Then you're kind of like, all right, maybe they got their act together. But to produce that and then rub our collective noses in it, and then take very, very pointed and just horrible shots at Gary Gygax. I'm sorry, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. Now look, I'll take a look at it. I'm sure a good Samaritan will loan me their PDF copy, and I will take a good look at it. And look, if it's very light on all that bullshit, I'll give it some light praise. I can't see that being as good as the original, though. It just by virtue of the fact it doesn't have Brahms art in it. The people making it are not invested. They're not bought in to the setting. Like the people that made that setting were bought into it. They were all in. To your point earlier, they've become so self-referential, so it's all these reboots and stuff like that, or things that have been done before. There's no way these people could have the same passion that the TUI Dark Sun authors did. Impossible.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I just think you need to look at the engine that's driving the bus, and the engine is not very good. And just because a car is moving down the road, clunking along, doesn't mean it's an efficient vehicle. So there's all that, and the other part too is that I don't see the body of work. I don't see the stepping stones to suggest that we should have any confidence at all. And the circling back to the OSR, the OSR has been punching so far above its weight for so long now that we just can't be ignored. No. And we're grognards. We call BS as soon as we see it, and we have edition fatigue. and we've got all the things. So we let it fly, and we create. But the thing is, we're not just offering criticism. We're counter creating. We're creating, and we're building on what's been done in the past. Some people just might hand wave it as nostalgia gaming, but I don't, because in honoring the past, in the present, you're also charting a future for the game. You're giving a pathway. You're showing young people or creators that might be inspired by your work, there's a way to do this. And they can pick up the torch and they can start doing other things too. Artists, designers, creators, I mean, whoever. So, you know, those are things that I think are really, really important. We need to stay centered and based, and just, you know, we can take a look at the window to look at the Gawker slow down and just keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, guys like Manganello, I don't have anything, you know, personal against Joe, but you can kind of tell he's got that that Death Saves brand, you know, where it's t-shirts, and now it may even be like some sort of like RPG material in it. It just, they're all leeches. They're all leeching off this bloated thing. It's like they're like the Ottoman Empire, just the sick man of the RPG world. And people just see ways that, you know, they can kind of make money off them. They're you know, devaluing their own brand by putting it on everything, you know, coffee cups, this, that. And I know there was some merchandising back in the day, but I think Wizards of the Coast is taking it to the next level. It feels so schlocky too. I mean, back in the day, there was a little bit of purity, you know, in you know, 1980s, you know, capitalism. I don't know. Today it just seems so cynical, but I don't know.
Well, at the end of the day, you're either giving to the hobby or you're taking away. And if you're somebody like Manganello and you've been in movies, or you're Hickman and you've co-written so many terrific books, or you're Luke and you created Gary Con. I mean, at some point, make things that people enjoy and want to play. That's the easiest way to center yourself and communicate that you're in it for the long run. And I don't see it's all window dressing to me.
Yeah, it's they become sort of so lame. I don't care how popular they are, but like sometimes the most popular things were also the lamest. You know, you think back to our childhood, you know, and there was, you know, that's why the punk scene was, you know, what it was. You know, it wasn't popular per se, but I guess, you know, the right people got it, you know, and I view Wizards of the Coast now as like Starship, you know, singing "We built this city on rock and roll," you know, something like that. It's just something so cheesy, you know, and you know, the OSR is very much something different. But one thing I did want
to they have the brand. They have the sorry, Dean.
No, go ahead.
They have the brand. Sorry, they have the brand, but we have the soul. So,
for sure.
There you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to ask, like, when you were writing the Northern Reaches, like, did it make you kind of like rethink anything from the 4 mega dungeons you've already written? Were you ever thinking, like, as you penned it, like, ooh, I wish I would have done this differently, or, you know, is this pretty much just all synthesized into one, you know, sort of master plan, I guess?
So mostly it's master plan. There is one, if I could like wave my magic wand and do one thing differently, with Highfell, I probably would have started with the dungeon located at the top of the mountain, and then from there had it break away at some point when the players are on it. I think that would have been much cooler and far more dramatic. So, but I didn't want to hamstring. So I probably would have like suggested that the referee do that like level 3, level 4, like get them started a little bit. So if I could have one take back, that would probably be it. But and I'll suggest that in the campaign setting. But having said that, that doesn't mean you can't play it exactly as written. But yeah, we all you always have the things like that that come up from time to time. But I do spend a lot of forethought. Obviously, thinking about this as a 6-part project. Very, Barrowmaze situated in its region, and Archaea, Highfell, and Druideep all situated. The forethought, I'm playing 18 holes, I'm not playing 9, and I've been thinking that way from the beginning because that's what we do as kind of academics.
Yeah, Joe needs more microtransactions. They're coming.
No,
they're coming. Not in Greg's game, but at Wizards of the Coast they are.
Yeah.
Just circling back here, seeing if anybody had any questions for you. We can start to head down the end road here a little bit. Yes, somebody, maybe it was Mr. RPG, Mr. Plinkett, who was just saying how cringy even the rest of that presentation was. It was pretty bad. Yeah, Dan Ayub dropping F-bombs, and I don't want to pile on the guy, but like, I thought that was like so, I don't know, so junior high, to have, the head of your brand on stage at the world's biggest RPG convention dropping F-bombs. I don't know. I know we live in a much more casual society, and Lord knows I drop them here, but in the same respect, I think if you're in that position, you should be a little bit more buttoned up, maybe just a tad. I don't know. Just me.
Well, these are the slips that tell you what's going on behind the curtain.
Yes, yeah, very very much so. Very much so. It's a very shallow bench there. As I said, I think my initial reaction when I heard about Dark Sun was, who's going to write it? Who do they have there? In the past, you could have at least said, well, I guess they got Mike Merles, and like him or hate him, Mike has some talent to put a project out there and have it be successful. May not be to our liking, but that's someone who can steer, I think, a project professionally through. And now I'm looking at all these nobodies there and just laughing my ass off. Like, who can do this?
Well, I think one of the things that's really important that you should do whether you're writing a 12-page adventure or you're writing a mega dungeon is remind yourself you're only as good as the last thing you did.
Yep.
Nothing that happened before that matters. So if the last thing you did sucked or it wasn't up to your personal standard, you should carry yourself with low self-esteem and endeavor to do better on the next one. So that's how I see it. You need to just once a year you can take out your laurels out of your pocket and you can kind of like rest on them and have your scotch. But as soon as that scotch is over, put them back in your pocket and go to work. And you have to have that. You have to be able to dig down and ask more of yourself each time you create a project, whether it's 10 pages or whether it's 300 pages. And I just don't see anybody that's got the laurels.
Not there, no. It's such a great point too. Like, I don't know if there's one successful person worth their salt that had high self-esteem. I think self-esteem is some of the most. I mean, unless it's if it's dangerous and you're self-harming yourself. But I mean, to have low self-esteem is one of the greatest gifts in the world.
It is, because you're like one of the things that I've tried to always be hungry and humble. Because as soon as you think you're all that, you're going to get your ass handed to you. And you need to just understand that there are tons of creative people, there are tons of well-read people and insightful people, and they're going to be looking at your stuff. And you need to understand that if there's some aspect of a game that you wrote or a book that you wrote or whatever isn't up to snuff, well, they'll tell you, and you need to take that upon yourself. You need to internalize it and say, how can I do better on the next project? Applying all the lessons you've learned from the past and applying, as much rigor. And that's the word that we use as academics. It's rigor. And if you don't have the rigor, it will show at the end of the day. And I think when you have a joy for the material, when you have a vision for the material, and then you've thought about art appraisal and you bring that to the material, now it's a rising tide. Like your work is seamless. It looks and feels integrated. And that's the hardest thing to bottle up when you're making role-playing games or adventures is feel. How does it feel? And that's the thing everyone keeps coming back to me, whether it's Warrior-Deep or Barrowmaze, is how it feels like the games they used to play in the 80s. And that, honestly, that's the greatest compliment that anybody could give me.
And having run Barrowmaze, I can attest to that. My players loved it. I loved running it. It was a home run. Warrior-Deep, I almost don't want to run it because I think that's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime feeling. It's so cool. It's such a cool adventure. Just reading through it, oh my lord! But yeah,
run it as a all dwarf campaign. That's how you
love your dwarves. I know.
I do.
Yeah, and getting back, just touching, putting a button on, what you were saying. That applies to everything. Look, that applies to this channel too. People have been kind enough to say, like, boy, you're a small channel, but you're, pretty moderately successful. You have a dedicated audience, and sometimes people will ask, like, what do you do? Not as many people as you'd think, because everybody seems to think they know nowadays, but occasionally I'll get that. And really, honestly, it's fear of embarrassment.
Mm-hmm. Fear
that I'm going to show up on a Wednesday. And if you ever noticed, and I'm sure everybody here has, unless there's a technical issue, the very now very rare technical issue, I start my show at 7 p.m. every Wednesday, and there's some cachet in being consistent and professional and showing up with stuff instead of just turning the camera on and letting her rip and being like, okay, guys, what's up? You carry the show, come on, start writing things. And no, you have to approach it like you do with your writing. You're an entertainer. Basically people are buying what you're saying. So you better at least put some effort into it, even if it's not to everybody's liking, and it never will be. You had better put a little bit of effort, and they should be able to see that effort. So even if they don't like what you're saying, they'll at least respect you.
Yeah, and a great line from Jordan Peterson that I've thought about a lot is that your confidence should never exceed your competence, and
yes.
You need to bring it every single time, and understand that you're in a place where people appreciate the kind of things that you write and your vision for the game. And those are things that you never take for granted, and you just try to do the best you can. And I've had such the best experiences I've had at conventions like North Texas or CNY or Texoma is when a father and a daughter or a father and a son come and play in my games together, and the thought that something I've made is reinforcing family bonds that's just an amazing thought, and it's always fun to play with families like that, and I've been very fortunate to have had a bunch of those experiences.
Yeah, if any of you, I know anybody here who's had the pleasure of meeting you and gaming with you, at any convention, it really is a treat. Greg is one of the kindest. He has time for everybody. If you ask for advice, he will give it to you. Just a super cool dude.
You may not like it, but you'll get some advice.
Well, yeah, but you'll at least give it in a very respectful way. You're not you're not a dick about it. But
No.
But yeah, always very cool. So if you ever have a chance, yes, please go to any convention where Greg is. Yes.
Yeah, I'm often reminded of the outstanding professors that I had that were foundational in my journey, and then also in role-playing games, being able to speak to Steve Winter, being able to speak to Ed Greenwood, being able to speak to all the Jim Ward and all these foundational people in the hobby, and I've tried to learn from everybody I've been exposed to and try to apply that. And I'm happy if I can offer a word of wisdom. I'm happy to do that.
Yep. And to your point about you're only as good as your last project. See if you agree with me here, because I've kind of silently, I've kind of watched you, and I'm kind of doing the the calculations in my head. Like I don't have your talent, I don't have your experience, but I have some talent. I have some experience. I've been published, before, but that was a long time ago. So, my advice, and see if you would agree with this, is, for a lot of these folks who want to write stuff, is to, I would say, at least start a little small at first. Build those skills before you write your magnum opus. And you wrote essentially a huge adventure before you wrote your game itself, before you wrote the campaign setting.
Mm-hmm. I'm wired differently than most people. So when I first started publishing in academic terms, normally what you would do is, if you're a late master's degree student or early PhD student, is you'll aim for like the bottom tier of journals, because those will be peer review, because those will be the easiest ones to get published in first. And sometimes you'll have the graduate student journal of whatever, right? I didn't do that then. I shot for the top. I understood that it might take, as an inexperienced academic, it might take me a little bit longer to go through the peer review process. But at the end of the day, I'll have some feathers in my cap relative to publishing in high-end journals. So when it came around to thinking about Barrowmaze, there was a transition, because as an academic, you only think about content. You don't have to worry about layout or whatever. And then when I first was thinking about Barrowmaze, it was like, okay, well, I don't really know about the PDF publishing industry, which was coming along at the time, and role-playing game publishing was new, so I divided it into two. But yeah, I have a tendency to shoot for the higher end of things. That's how I'm wired, and I love a good challenge. I like to grow, and the only thing that Karl Marx ever got right was that conflict brings change, and you need to challenge yourself. You need to be able to say, okay, well, I know I could do this, but this is where I want to end up going, and I might not get there, but in trying to get there, I'm going to improve beyond what I know I could do. And I think that I know everyone has a different point of view and perspective, and that's fine. But that's where I'm at. It's the personal growth, the inner growth, and the growth as a writer and a designer that I take as a challenge, and that's kind of where I'm at with things.
Yeah. Well, you have, like I said, you have some exceptional credentials under your name, and so, like you said, you went through that cauldron of academia back when it was definitely something.
It was hard. It was
vicious, yeah.
My one of my professors, what we'd do is we'd write our essays on whatever subject matter. Then we would come back to seminar, and you had to copy your essay for all the other students in the class. Then a week later, you'd come back, and you had to sit there, and each person would get a chance to tan your ass, one by one by one, and your only real response was, "Yes, sir, may I have another?" And what you did is you just wrote, they criticized you publicly in front of everybody, and you had to take it. And that's how you kind of internalize, well, geez, my work's not as good as I thought it was. And I could do these things to make it better. And then subject to the revisions that you made, you could resubmit the week after that, and your professor would gauge whether you could increase your grade or not, subject to the revisions that were provided to you by your peers. So it was all peer kind of related. And he always said that he wanted the blood on the floor version, and that's the crucible by which I was pushed through.
And Mark Clement is asking how small I was talking about. Well, I'm me personally, again, someone like Greg who's got, some better chops, I'm aiming at, look, I did a class. Okay. That introduces me to getting something done inside my layout program. All right. So now I'm doing basic layout. Now I'm going to do a short adventure, just a one-nighter, maybe 10, 15 pages at the most. But again, now all of a sudden, now you're laying out an entire adventure. You're getting it published with art and everything else. Like I said, and I'm doing some of the art myself, not all of it, but some of it.
But Double D, at the end of the day, it's not a question of scale, right? It's a question of perspective is really important when you're thinking as a creative, and you're only ever in competition with yourself. You don't have to worry about what person X is doing or what person Y is doing. Wish them well and hope they do terrific. But at the end of the day, when you release something into the wild, it's a meritocracy, and the ideas will float or they'll sink. So if they sink, do better the next time. If they float, do better the next time. So it doesn't really matter. You have to have your conscience has to be okay. Like, yes, this is good enough to let go into the world, and the internet will tell you if it's not.
This is true. Yep. I guess the only other thing that doing something a little more modest and reach first. So many people, unjustifiably give up. They reach a couple of creative roadblocks. They get writer's block. Something doesn't work out, and then they just throw up their hands, and it stays, undone forever. But like you said, if you have your drive, if you, are very focused, that shouldn't be a problem. But it is. I suppose it is for some folks.
It can be, but again, it's all about perspective. So what I tell people when they ask me this question is, I tell them, embrace creative self-doubt. That's normal. It's healthy. So if you're writing something and you're like, damn it, this sucks. Like, everyone's going to think this sucks, and then I'm going to suck, and then the work will suck. Well, okay, do better. Embrace creative self-doubt. And understand that it's in doing a project for long enough, it may look like it's a nice, steady trajectory that's going like this, but within that trajectory, if you explode it out, there are going to be little peaks and valleys as it happens. And when you're in that valley, you have to say to yourself, well, yeah, this sucks, and everybody thinks I'm going to suck, but just stick it out. Keep going. And then when you're in a mountain, and you think, oh yeah, I'm lighting the world on fire, this is going to be amazing, pull yourself back down a little bit. It's probably not that amazing. So find a midline, be reasonable with yourself, and be judicious in both your self-praise and your self-criticism, and understand that a whale only gets eaten one bite at a time, and it's a lot of bites.
Yeah, just be professional, treat it like a job. Just, like you said, ride the highs and lows out, and the
other part
be where you want to be.
The bar for excellence has never been lower than it is right now.
This is true.
This is working in your favor.
Yes, as Adino says here, Greg is telling exactly why these quote-unquote designers at WotC are so bad at creating. They've not faced life's hard lessons and earned their skill. No, a lot of them have been hired, I hate to say it, based on who they are, what their sex organs are. it's almost anything but actual talent. Like there's nothing Mackenzie DeArmas, who just started playing, D&D in 2019. There's nothing that she wrote that would justify her getting a job at the world's #1, by dollar amount RPG company. Nothing at all. But they wanted a woman. They wanted an autistic woman, and that's what we got. So, let's see how that works out. We do see how it's working out, but
yeah,
it's never good. Yep, DEI hires for sure. Okay, I think we're at about 9. That's about 2 hours in. So, do you have anything? Your last elevator pitch for? Let's get it here. Sorry, here. Get it up here, nice and big for everybody. Yep, come on, back to the top. There we go. The Northern Reaches. Barrowmaze, give us the elevator pitch for your campaign setting for all of your mega dungeons and the Dragonslayer RPG, Greg.
Well, you're putting me on the spot, Double D, and this just into the newsroom, but I'm a terrible salesman. So my perspective is this. This has been such a big part of my life and such a big part of my home game, and it's just been such a joy to create over time that's kind of like I'm taking something that's a really big part of who I am, just like Barrowmaze and Archaea, Highfell, and Interodi, which is a big part of who I am, and I'm releasing it kind of into the wild. I'm a very firm believer that that if you pour your heart and your soul into things, that people will see it and they'll feel it. And I hope that that's what happens with the campaign setting. So if you were excited about giving Barrowmaze a go, or you were excited about Dweodeep or anything in between, that I think you'll definitely be excited about this campaign setting. It integrates everything that you've seen so far with my contributions to old school role-playing, and all the tenets and all the foundational elements that are a part of gaming for me, that are a part of what we call in academic terms an ontology. So ontos for self and logos for study. And so, I'm a person that I self-study, and I've self-studied in terms of what's important and core for me as it's expressed in role-playing games. And those things you see in the mega dungeons, and you'll see in the campaign setting as well. So my pitch would just be, if you want a game with soul, if you want a campaign setting with soul, if you want to play in that campaign setting, or just borrow aspects of it for your home game, this is something that I think you'll be happy with, and it's going to get my best effort. That's for sure.
No doubt about that. He's always delivered before. You really can't trust anything WotC does these days, but Greg has knocked everything he's done out of the park. In fact, our buddy Ryan here, he's looking out for you. Do I need to continue my search for an American sugar mama for Greg? I was late to the stream. You probably put that on hold.
Applications are open.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. We desperately want to get you down here and claim you as our own.
Well, I'd fit, as you well know.
Yes,
I'm a personal liberty, freedom of speech absolutist.
Yep, for sure. Okay, and thank you, Ryan, for that. Thanks all of you guys for all your generous super chats and great questions for Greg. Like I said, I will buy. I have everything. The only thing I didn't have behind me was I didn't have Archaea. I had the PDF, which I had picked up at some point, but I never had the hardback. So,
well, just I'll send you one. No problem.
No, don't. I backed it. I backed it.
Want.
I backed it, brother. I did it above board. I did it above board. I actually added it. So that shows you can add on. I got the campaign setting, the big map, the beautiful map, and I added on Archaea. So I will tell you, if you're new to Greg's stuff, you could get the campaign setting and the rule book, of course. And if you're looking for one great adventure, you could do Barrowmaze, Dwaro Deep if you're you really want to go through Moria. Like I said, a lot of great choices. But yeah, this man produces awesome stuff, and he's a guy we should be supporting. I have no doubt. I explicitly, let me repeat that, I explicitly endorse this campaign setting and everything that Greg does. So.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you very much, Double D.
Yep. All right. That's all for tonight. We'll see you guys Wednesday. Thanks for turning out, all of you guys, on an off night on a Monday, but it was definitely worth it to talk to our friend Greg, and we'll have him back as soon as we can. Looking for like spring of next year, right? For things to get into people's hands.
Yeah, that's it. And maybe a little sooner, subject to how things work out. But I'm giving myself a little extra time, which you have to do when you're doing a Kickstarter, of course. And I've been doing some smaller modules as well, which the one I've been playtesting all summer of 26 will be out next year as well, which is based on the Tam O'Shanter poem by Scottish poet Robert Burns.
Can't wait to get that. Yeah, you see the other two right above me here. I picked those up at the last convention. So yeah, get those little mini adventures that Greg does when you can, because those are limited print runs. So yeah, you can only get those for a short time. Okay. And like I said, the good thing about someone as driven as Greg is, it's going to get done, and it's going to get done in a timely manner. Even if it's not exactly when, it won't be probably too far off, I'm guessing, because everything else you've done has been delivered, pretty much, when you said it was going to be. Yep. So yeah, you do not mess around. So there you go. Go ahead.
Just to add that to that point, a deadline is a privilege.
Yes.
So if people like your stuff enough that you have a deadline, that's a privilege, and you take it professionally and responsibly.
Yep. It's a sacred trust with the people who've put money in your hands, and you don't shed it lightly, and too many people do, but you're not one of them. Yep. So yeah, I can't wait to see this, buddy. And we will have you on again in the future, as always. So thanks a lot, chat. Thank you, Greg. And like I said, we'll talk to you guys on Wednesday. Greg, if you want to hang around just a second afterward, we'll chit-chat just a moment.
Yes, sir.
All right. Take care, guys. Love you.